Okay, I want you to get a timestamp in your head for this deep dive. 12:14 a.m.
So middle of the night, it's quiet. Or, as quiet as it gets in a high-security military bunker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the source documents we're looking at today, which are just this incredibly tense reconstruction of September 26th, 1983 at 12:14 a.m., that's silence.
It breaks.
And it doesn't just break. The system, and this is a direct quote, it screamed.
Yeah, and they don't mean that metaphorically, do they? This isn't like a notification beep on your phone.
Oh, no, this was a siren, a sound designed to cause absolute immediate panic. It was literally the sound of the end of the world starting.
Because what was on the screen? It wasn't a glitch, at least not according to the computer. It wasn't a drill. It was the word L1CH in these giant red letters.
5 incoming nuclear missiles. And just like that, according to the best Soviet tech at the time, World War III hadn't just become possible.
It had already started.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we aren't just telling a history story. We're really unpacking a single moment. I mean, really just a few minutes, where the fate of the entire world, all of us, hung on one single human emotion.
Out.
Which is so interesting because that's usually the thing we try to train out of people in these situations.
Right. You want decisiveness, you want action.
But today, we're looking at a case where being unsure, where hesitating, was the only thing that mattered.
We're talking about the story of Stanislav Petrov and the night he saved the world by doing absolutely nothing.
Okay, so before we get into the sirens in the bunker, we have to set the stage. The source material takes us back to September 1983. And for anyone who wasn't around then, the vibe wasn't just Cold War tension. It was something a lot darker.
Oh, absolutely. The sources we're looking at describe this as maybe the most fragile point in the entire Cold War. Some historians even say it was more dangerous than the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Wow, more dangerous than Cuba. That's a huge claim.
It is, but it's because of the mindset of the leadership. You have to remember what just happened. 3 weeks before this incident, the Soviets shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007.
A civilian airliner.
Exactly. They shot it down because they genuinely believed it was a spy plane. So the world is furious, the US is talking about the evil empire, and the Soviet leadership, especially Yuri Andropov, was completely convinced the Americans were planning a decapitation strike.
A decapitation strike, the term sounds awful.
It's a military term, yeah. It means a surprise first strike, one designed to wipe out your enemy's leadership and command centers before they can even react.
So in Moscow, the feeling wasn't if a war is coming, it was when.
Correct. They were just waiting for it. They were sleeping with one eye open, basically.
And so in the middle of all that geopolitical paranoia, we zoom in on this one bunker, Serpukhov 15.
It sounds like something out of science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it was very real. A secret early warning bunker outside Moscow.
I'm picturing it, concrete walls, flickering lights, guys hunched over these massive green screens, lots of smoke.
That's probably not far off. And their job was terrifyingly simple. The source breaks it down, watch the ecosystem, detect an American nuclear launch, and report it up the chain immediately.
And OCO, that translates to eye, right?
Yes, the eye of the Soviet Union. And this wasn't ground radar. Ground radar only sees missiles when they come over the horizon, and by then it's almost too late.
So these were satellites.
Exactly. Satellites in a special Molniya orbit.
Molniya orbit. Okay, what does that mean? It's not a normal orbit.
No, it's really elliptical. It's designed so the satellite kind of hangs for a long time, way up high over the northern hemisphere, so it's looking down at the U.S. missile fields.
So it's the absolute first tripwire. If a Minuteman missile leads a silo in, say, North Dakota, these things see the heat flash instantly.
Instantly. And that speed is the whole point. If you see a launch from a satellite, you give your leadership maybe 25, 30 minutes to respond. If you wait for ground radar, you've only got about half that.
And in a nuclear war, 15 minutes is everything.
It's the difference between retaliating and just being wiped off the map.
Okay, so let's get into the timeline from the source. It's just after midnight. Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer. He's actually covering for someone, isn't he?
He is, yeah. It wasn't his regular shift. And his background is so important here. He's a lieutenant colonel, but he's an engineer. He actually helped build the system he's now monitoring.
So he knows its quirks. He knows what's under the hood, so to speak.
Hey, better than anyone. So he's there, and suddenly the main screen just flashes bright red.
The source says the siren was deafening.
Yeah.
And this huge backlit panel just says LANCH.
First, one missile detected.
Which is bad enough, but then it gets worse.
Then 2, then 3, 4, 5. And the system isn't, being ambiguous. It says in glowing letters, high reliability. This isn't a maybe.
Can you just imagine the adrenaline in that room? The lights flashing, people shouting. The computer that you are trained to believe is infallible is telling you 5 nukes are on their way?
And this is where we have to talk about what the source calls the logic of annihilation.
Oof. Yeah, that's a heavy phrase.
But it's accurate. The brutal logic of the whole system is this. You cannot wait for the missiles to land, to be sure. Because if you wait for impact, you're gone. Your communications are gone. You can't strike back.
It's the whole principle of mutual assured destruction. It only works if you can guarantee you can shoot back.
Exactly. So hesitation is death. The system is designed specifically to remove human slowness and doubt. It demands you act now.
But standing between that system and the end of the world is Stanislav Petrov. And everyone else in the room is, well, they're panicking. They're looking at him.
And he just freezes, or it looks like he freezes. The source says he was in shock, but his mind was racing. He's the man in the room.
And the protocol is crystal clear, right? Pick up the phone, call the Kremlin, confirm the attack.
That's his job. He doesn't launch the missiles himself, but he's the one who gives the confirmation that the general secretary needs to do it. If Petrov says it's real, given the tension at the time, they launch. No hesitation.
So he's literally holding the fate of the world in his hands. But he doesn't make the call. Why? The screen says 5 missiles, high reliability. What stops him?
Well, it's a mix of things. It's instinct, but it's also that engineering background we mentioned. First, it was the number.
5.
Just 5.
And this is what the source calls his reflection loop. He's basically running a mental simulation. He knows the doctrine. If the U.S. is going to start a nuclear war,
right,
a full-on first strike.
You don't send 5 missiles. It makes zero strategic sense. If you're going to strike first, you send everything. You send hundreds, thousands of missiles to overwhelm their defenses so they can't possibly fire back.
Right. Launching just 5 is.
It's suicide. You're guaranteeing a full-scale retaliation for, what, taking out a few cities? It's completely irrational.
Okay, so that's the first doubt. Why only 5? But he still has the computer screaming at him. And there are other systems to check, right?
Yes. So he's got the satellite data from OCO, but he's also waiting for confirmation from ground-based radar.
And the ground radar isn't seeing anything.
Nothing. Now, there's a delay, sure. The radar only picks them up after they clear the horizon, but minutes are ticking by and the radar screens are still blank, still silent.
So you have this huge conflict. Man versus machine. The computer is shouting, attack. The radar is saying nothing, and protocol, the rulebook he's lived by his whole career, says you trust the computer.
And this is where being an engineer saved the world. Because he knows the system isn't perfect, he knows it was rushed into service, he knows it has bugs.
So a normal officer might have just blindly trusted the advanced tech. But Petrov knows how the sausage is made.
He knows it's just code written by fallible people. He knows that even billion-dollar systems can fail. And that simple thought in that moment is everything.
It seems so obvious now, but with sirens blaring. I can't imagine how hard it would be to trust your gut over what a screen is telling you.
It's almost impossible, but he weighs the machine's certainty against his own doubt.
So we're at the critical moment. Everyone's looking at him. The hotline to headquarters is right there. What does he do?
He picks up the phone and he reports a false alarm.
I just get chills thinking about it. He didn't have proof, did he?
None. It was a guess. An educated one, maybe, but still a 50-50 guess. He went against all the evidence on his main screen and told his bosses, our computer is lying.
And then comes what the source calls the worst part.
The waiting.
Because after he makes that call, he still doesn't know if he was right.
Not at all. He's made his bet, and there are only 2 outcomes. If he's right, nothing happens. If he's wrong,
there's no more warning.
Just impact.
I mean, can you imagine standing there just watching the clock tick? The computer says the missiles are just minutes away. 1 minute passes, 2 minutes. You're waiting to find out if you and everyone you've ever known is about to be vaporized.
And if you're wrong, you are the one responsible. You denied your country the chance to strike back. You'd go down as the biggest traitor in history.
This psychological pressure must have been unbearable. The reports say his subordinates were just drenched in sweat.
But then, more minutes pass.
No explosions.
No confirmations from ground radar.
The missiles never arrived.
Because they were never there.
He was right. It was a ghost in the machine.
So once the adrenaline is gone, they have to figure out, what the hell just happened? How does a system this sophisticated Just hallucinate 5 ICBMs.
And the answer is just, it's so mundane, it's almost funny. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't some secret weapon.
It was clouds, right.
High-altitude clouds.
And the autumn equinox.
Wait, hold on. The equinox. How does the time of year almost cause a nuclear war?
Okay, so remember, the satellite is looking down at the edge of the Earth, right? It's looking for the heat from a missile engine against the cold black of space.
Right. Hot thing, cold background. Simple.
But on this specific day, because of the equinox, there was this rare alignment of the sun, the satellite, and the U.S. missile fields. The sun was at just the right angle to glance off the tops of some very high-altitude clouds.
Like sunlight off a mirror.
Exactly. An incredibly bright reflection. And here's the kicker. From the satellite's point of view, that reflection looked like it was moving. It looked like the signature of a Minuteman missile launch.
Oh, wow. So the computer wasn't malfunctioning, technically?
Not really. It saw a heat signature that matched the pattern it was programmed to identify as a threat. It did its job. It just had no common sense. It couldn't ask, hey, could this just be the sun hitting a cloud?
That is just terrifying. A micro moment of cosmic bad luck almost ends human civilization.
It really shows you how fragile these automated systems are. We think of them as being so smart, but they can be fooled by sunlight.
So Petrov saves the world. He literally stops Armageddon. If he had just followed the rules, we wouldn't be here. So you'd think, he'd get a medal, maybe a statue in Red Square.
You would think. But this is where the story takes that really dark bureaucratic twist.
The aftermath.
Yeah.
The source says he was not celebrated.
He was reprimanded.
Reprimanded.
Yeah.
For stopping a nuclear war. That makes no sense.
It sounds insane, but if you look at the bureaucratic logic the source talks about, it starts to make a kind of perverse sense.
Okay, so why? Was it because he broke protocol?
That was the official excuse, yeah. They nailed him on paperwork violations. For not filling out the combat log correctly while he was, a little busy preventing the apocalypse.
Sorry I didn't get to my paperwork. I was averting global thermonuclear war.
But the real reason was deeper. The source puts it perfectly. Admitting Petrov was right meant admitting the system had a fatal flaw.
Yeah. And big, expensive military systems don't like to admit flaws.
Especially not Soviet ones. Think of the generals who championed this project. They spent billions. They promised the Politburo an impenetrable shield. If they give Petrov a medal, they are publicly admitting that their shield can be tricked by clouds. They're admitting the machine failed, and a human had to save the day.
To celebrate him would be to embarrass the entire establishment.
So they just swept it under the rug. Petrov was reassigned, he retired early, had a nervous breakdown, and the world just kept spinning, completely unaware of how close it came.
And we didn't even know about this until the late 90s.
That's the really spooky part. This was a secret. It makes you wonder, how many other close calls were there that we just never heard about?
Yeah, that's a question that'll keep you up at night. So let's bring this all together. The source material frames this as a different kind of heroism, doesn't it?
Right. A hero is usually someone who acts, who charges forward. Petrov's heroism was in his inaction. It was in his hesitation.
It was in his doubt.
And the source makes this fantastic point. It says the system actually worked perfectly, and that was the problem.
How did it work perfectly if it was wrong?
Well, the system, meaning the whole protocol, was designed to be fast, to remove human emotion and doubt, to be efficient. It did all of that. It was working as designed.
And in this one case, efficiency would have meant extinction.
Exactly. We build these systems to remove human error. But here, the thing we call human error, doubt, hesitation, context, that was the only thing that worked. It was the fail-safe.
It's the whole human versus AI debate just decades earlier.
It really is. We build machines to give us certainty. We think doubt is a weakness. But on that night, certainty would have ended the world. Doubt is what saved it.
The human in the loop wasn't the weak link. The human in the loop was the entire point.
He could ask a question the computer couldn't. Does this make sense? The machine just matches patterns. A human can understand context.
That is such a powerful takeaway. We're always trying to optimize everything, to be faster, more certain. This is a story about the profound power of just stopping and saying, wait a minute, this feels wrong.
And that leads to the uncomfortable truth that our source material leaves us with.
Which is?
That we are often in the most danger, not when we're unsure, but when we are absolutely certain.
The most dangerous moment is when everyone is absolutely certain. Wow. That is going to stick with me.
It should, because certainty is what stops you from questioning. It's what stops you from looking for another explanation, like sunlight on a cloud. When you're certain, you just launch.
And in our world now, which is getting more and more automated, relying on algorithms, Maybe holding on to that little bit of human doubt is more important than ever.
I think it is. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is just stand still and ask, are we sure about this?
Well, on that note, a note of healthy skepticism and the life-saving power of doing absolutely nothing, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a fascinating, if terrifying, look into the abyss.
It really has. Thank you all for listening. And next time you feel that moment of hesitation, maybe don't be so hard on yourself. You might just be saving the world.
Or at the very least, avoiding a really bad decision.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.